America's secret economic weapon. Real good article here that I want to read to you because when you're looking at your total net worth, if you're not including housing in there, you're just making a mistake of just immense proportions. And when I say net worth, I'm talking about your ability to cash, to have access to equity in your home to help with your retirement. I don't know why people just inherently refuse to consider their home value as part of a retirement plan. You might not need to, have to, that's fine. But you just say, I have this equity tied in my home, I'm not touching it because Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman says reverse mortgages are bad. I don't get it, man. It's weird, man. All right, so let's talk about this. And again, I'm not, look, you got to, I don't sell anything. I don't get paid from any of this stuff. You got to do what you got to do. I'm just sitting there thinking, if you got equity and you have limited cash flow, why not look into reverse mortgages? It's nuts to me. Dateline, August 20th, Connor Sen. A paradox of this economic crisis is that the U.S. employment remains 13 million below pre-pandemic peak. Yet the net worth of American households may be at a record high, thanks to the soaring prices of stocks and homes. This doesn't discount the need for fiscal relief, but it's an important difference from the recovery that followed the 2008 GFC, global financial crisis. Then, households spent 5 years repairing their balance sheets. They largely won't have to do that again this time, and that could help to fast forward the economic expansion once the public health crisis ends, which it is. It's ended. The components of household net worth that fluctuate are largely based on the stock market and home prices. During the 2001 recession, housing and bonds, I would add, were fairly stable, but stocks took a few years to recover. So net worth was mostly flat until 2003. That's not true. Net worth was way down, but from 2003 because the market fell 9, 12, 22%, and then going about 10% going into March of 2003 as well. So it wasn't flat, it was down. When it started to increase again as stocks rebounded. The recovery after 2008 took longer. Home prices crashed, as did stocks, absolutely. And it took years for them to gain ground. I think it was about 2012 when we finally got back to even Steven. After peaking in 2007, it took household net worth 5 years to rebound, and that's just the aggregate. It doesn't account for the inequality that resulted with home values in working class and non-white neighborhoods. Because if you live in a white neighborhood, no one else lives there of any other race. Lagging behind those in wealthier and well-educated neighborhoods. Part of the recovery from 2008 involved years of householdings paying down debt while the housing market sat in doldrums. That's partly why the recession felt like it lasted for years, even though it technically ended in 2009. The Great Recession struck at the heart of the middle-class wealth, primarily home equity, but also investment portfolios. Mostly home equity for most middle-class people. Most middle-class people don't have significant assets in 401ks and IRAs. I mean, they have some. Their biggest investment by far and away is their home. And when the home prices crash, they're hurting. They couldn't. I'm telling you, I wrote about it in my book, Strategic Money Planning, which you should get on Amazon. If you had a job loss and you needed to sell your home to move to another city with a better job opportunity, you couldn't do it if you're underwater. I'm telling you, I wrote about that. Barring an unexpected crash in the stock market or sharp reversal in the housing market, households seem to be in different shape in 2020. Net worth fell by an aggregate of $7 trillion in the first quarter, but all of that was due to tumbling stock prices. With stocks now back at all-time highs and home prices with them, we should expect third quarter data to show a new high for net worth, just 3 quarters after its most recent high. This doesn't discount the pain and hardship of millions of households and small businesses. What it does suggest is that this is very different from 2008. Some have called it a K-shaped recovery with stark differences between winners and losers, and the extent of human suffering is not captured very well by some of the aggregate data. The good news is that while today's unemployment situation may echo that of 2009, household balance sheets in the aggregate are in much better shape. We're not likely to go through years of a foreclosure crisis or households paying down debt. The personal savings rate now stands at 19%, implying at least that some households have a significant cushion to spend once they feel safe to do so. If the savings, this is my concern, my friends, if the saving rate, they've been harking for years about the lack of a savings rate. which is stupid because they don't take into consideration your savings via Social Security. But anyway, remember, 70% of the GDP, the growth of the American economy, is due to consumer spending. So consumers having a savings rate of 19%, that inherently means they're not spending, which means the GDP will suffer because of that. This is the Japanese model, part and parcel right here. The Japanese save more, they spend less, thus their GDP goes down without question. There's no inflation, no growth, not much in unemployment either. No wage growth, no inflation, no economic growth, no interest rates. Or anything. Is just because they don't consume. And all the Fed tools, we're going to cut the interest rates. It doesn't matter if you're not borrowing and consuming. And this is what I think a lot of economists don't understand. They say, oh, well, if we got a high savings rate, that'll go to consumption later on. Not if people say, I don't want to take that risk again. I'm not going to consume if there's a threat to my ability to pay the mortgage. It's just, they're not going to do it, man. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to be 100% like Japan, but we've had 2 decades, a roller coaster like never seen before. Which makes sense. The 30s were never seen before. The 70s were never seen before. The aughts were kind of seen in the 1930s, but still, this is unprecedented for the last 20 years. And at some point, people say, I'm more comfortable hoarding cash than I am buying that new car, for instance. I just want to make sure when this happens again, which it inevitably will, I'm prepared as I possibly can be. And that's going to have a deflating effect on growth for sure. So for all the economists, we need to raise the savings rate. Well, there you go, baby. Elevated levels of home equity could also kickstart a wave of small business formation next year, perhaps offsetting some bankruptcies this year. I don't know about that. It couldn't do that after 2008 when they lacked equity in their home. Tapping home equity to start a business is likely easier and faster than getting a small business loan, and home equity levels have doubled over the past decade, providing an important source of funding for would-be entrepreneurs. It remains the case that a sustainable economic recovery starts with getting the virus under control, which it is. Once we do, the reasons to believe we're in a much better position to have a robust recovery than we were in 2009. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. That's from Bloomberg. I think it's definitely sunnier today than it was just 3 months ago for sure. I thought for sure home prices would deflate. I'm stunned they haven't. You have a lack of supply and increasing demand that inherently makes prices go up. That's all there is to it. Will supply come back? I don't know. This remains to be seen. But supply is a new builds, right? That's supply, or people listing their homes. I just don't know. But if you have an even Steven here, and then demand goes up and supply goes down, that's an increase in prices without question. I'm surprised. I thought the supply would go up, the demand would go down. So count me on the wrong end of this, that's for sure. But hey, I'll take it. Home equity helps me too. We'll see you.